Hi, this is Adam McAtee, and I want to share 6 tips on how to choose the right Pilates program for you, just based off of my decade of experience in both classical and contemporary Pilates, as well as other movement practices out there in the world. And just to share a little bit about me, I actually went into my Pilates training program with 2 hours of Pilates under my belt. So if you feel like, oh, I don't have enough experience, I'm not that body type, that was me in every sense of it. Couldn't touch my toes, couldn't bend, had 2 hours of Pilates sessions, and those Pilates sessions were done by my mother. Uh, so if I can do it, you can absolutely do it. And I actually started my Pilates training in a classical training, or what would be deemed as a classical training. Went through that program, and I went through like my ups and downs because I was kind of learning just how to do Pilates as I was learning how all the history of it, as well as how to teach it. I taught for years in that kind of mindset, in a classical mindset, which I had appreciation from, but I also felt like something was missing. So with that, I went and I studied some contemporary Pilates, which just means like not necessarily a historical point of view, but an attempt of updating the information. And everyone kind of has their own perspectives on that. When I did that, that was nice, but again, I needed more. So I actually went to university and I started to study exercise science. So I just learned to study movement in general, as opposed to just the modality of Pilates. And I found myself in a physical therapy program where I currently reside. So I'm teaching Pilates and I'm learning how to be a physical therapist. And I have a lot to offer, and I just want to, I've learned so much along the way, and I just want to be of service to you to help you make that decision of, should I become a Pilates instructor? You know, what's valuable? What should I look for? And what's the right program for me? And make sure to stay for the end, because I have a bonus tip that you will just absolutely love and adore at the end. But to start with my tips here for you, is it's essential that you enjoy the program that you're taking. You're going to be doing it for however long that is, like, you know, whether it be accelerated program, a 6-month program, year, so on and so forth. You want to enjoy that time. So I say it's essential to find a program that fits your lifestyle. One that, if you have kids at home, pets, family, friends, you like to travel, find a program that you can see yourself really enjoying, because if you enjoy it, that's not only going to help your learning process, but it's a year of your life. Like, why not have a good time with it? And another aspect of a training program that you do have to consider is the cost. And the cost isn't always what like the website says. You know, the website says $8,000, $9,000, $7,000, depending on the program. I honestly don't know the exact figures, but it's usually somewhere in that ballpark. And sometimes when you walk out of the program, that's actually not what you spent. You might have spent $7,000 in the program, but then you decided to take private lessons because XYZ reason. You also needed to take group classes, which were not included in your training program. And then, you know, maybe this program has test outs, and the test outs are $300 additional cost. And then if you're not yet competent or fail a test out, now you have to do another one for $200. Some programs are like that. So it's nice to understand what you're signing up for in terms of total cost. And there's also programs that actually have all of that included. Like, it's just one lump sum that you can pay, or you can pay it in payments at the same cost or similar cost. And some of them actually offer group classes. Like you don't have to pay for a single additional class in your program. You literally just have the upfront cost. And for me, that's what I learned, because I didn't go that way. I had a cost and I budgeted it out. And then I found myself spending all this extra money on lessons and classes and all of this. And at the end of the day, I spent like $2,000 more than I thought that I would. If that's something that is interesting to you, like you're like, oh, I don't mind spending that, totally cool. If you're like me and you want to know exactly what the cost is, then hop on a call with a representative of that program and just kind of ask them detailed questions like, is this just a flat rate? Do I have to pay for extra lessons? Do you offer classes? Are test outs an additional cost? What happens if I don't pass an assessment or a test out? All of those things can really be really helpful. And especially nowadays, like we have so many options. You can study with anyone, like anywhere in the world. So many programs offer face-to-face and online. So if you're an individual that really wants to be face-to-face, there's that option. If you're an individual that likes online, you also have that option. That option wasn't there for me when I first did my Pilates programs, but now they are. And I've fortunately been exposed to a lot of research, and the learning outcomes are the same. So with that, I wouldn't quite worry about like, oh, is one better? People who do face-to-face are better instructors than people that do online? It makes no difference. But it kind of loops back to your first point. Like, what's my lifestyle? Like, do I want to drive to the studio however many times a week? Or do I just want to pop my computer up at home and get an education that way? And with that, a lot of times those the face-to-face programs, they have a different style of learning in the sense of like the way the program is distributed. You'll oftentimes go in on a weekend, like Saturday and Sunday, sometimes Friday too, and you'll do like 8 hours, like 8 hours Saturday, 8 hours Sunday, and then you come back in like 2 weeks or a month. That all depends on the program, but essentially it's like a long day. Whereas there are also online programs that provide the same learning outcomes, and you do what's called distributed learning, where you sit at a computer and it's really only an hour or an hour and a half at a time for like a live interaction, and then you can walk away, and then you come back later on at whatever time to do some online learning or another hour and a half at some point. Meaning that if it's better for your lifestyle to just break it up, and kind of be more flexible, I recommend that. That's what I'm doing for physical. I'm doing that for physical therapy. I like being able to do my work essentially when I want to, or schedule a meeting at a time that works well for me. But some people just prefer to do like, I just want to go and do the long days, in one of the Pilates studios, and that option's available to you as well. But it all goes down to like, what's your lifestyle? Can you get away on the weekend? Do you tend to learn well by, at the 7th hour on the 2nd day in a row? Like, are you still learning? My brain 100% checks out. But that option is totally available. But also another thing that's kind of in line with that, sometimes what I get asked is like, oh, what about like a short intensive program? Like, you can just learn it in 2 weeks. Like, why would I spend a year if I can just do it in 2 weeks? And that option is available, right? And that really just kind of depends on what your goal is. If your goal is, I want to really learn Pilates, learn movement, and when I leave my program, I am 100% industry ready, I would recommend a different program than a short intensive. Learning just takes time. That's why people don't get degrees in a week, right? But if you're like a front desk at a studio and the owner is like, oh my gosh, I just had 3 instructors quit, I really need somebody. And then you're there and he or she offers to provide you like a 2-week intensive, like, okay, like that could be like a plausible reason to do it, because that has to do with like, you need to learn this as fast as possible. However, what's also just within that is just recognize that a lot of learning is not going to happen in 2 weeks. You might like learn like exercises, programs, stuff like that. But in terms of like an overall understanding, that'll take time. So you just may find yourself coming back and doing another program at some point in time that works well for you. But there's really no harm in doing a 2-week program. You just should have a really good, like a nice reason for that, and understand the pros and the cons. Another thing, what studios want, right? Like mat and reformer are typically, like, I don't want to say mandatory, but it looks really good, right? If you've studied mat and reformer and you've earned a certificate of completion for those, there's other apparatuses and stuff like that that are all cool, but I highly recommend that you look at least getting the mat and reformer if your goal is to work at a studio. So that was an assumption. Apologize for that. It was assuming that you wanted to work at a studio, but maybe you don't, right? Like maybe you just want to work at like a recreation center down the street and they only have mats. Then you don't need a reformer. If that's all you want to do, right? I just want to teach Pilates 2 hours a week. Fine, that's all you need. But if you're looking to really dive into the industry, make this a part-time, a full-time job, things like that, I highly recommend looking at both reformer and mat. Some programs will just blend them together. And then other programs will be like, well, you can do mat, and then once you're done with that, then a separate course is reformer. And all that goes back to lifestyle and costs. You know, is it cheap? Is it more affordable to do them both together? Is it better for your lifestyle? Is it better to just pay for one and then do the other? But the take-home message, if you're looking to be an instructor in the industry, from my experience, you're just gonna have so many more doors open to you if you leave with an education in both mat as well as reformer. And in addition, another point here is that the program that you go to, it's really helpful if they're internationally recognized, especially nowadays, where a lot of Pilates is done online, or you can work for someone that isn't even in your country, in your state, etc. Or maybe maybe they're right down the street. However, that wasn't my experience, and my experience was like I went to like a brick and mortar studio that had a certificate program here in Southern California. There were good things and there were bad things about that. I kind of felt at home at the studio, and there was that feel to it. But when I left and I applied for a job, no one knew where I went to school. So I had to kind of navigate my way through the industry a little bit differently, and everything worked out, like I'm here. But if I were to do it all over again, I would look for that international recognition. So not only just like the studios around you know of this program, but people all over the web can recognize it. So that just has a ton of value in that. And a lot of times those programs have a lot of like community to them. And so it's not only like the international recognition, so for like job security and all of those things, but just the community that you're working with while you're in the program. Like, oh my gosh, we just did our first reformer intensive, and then you can go on to like an online portal, like a Facebook group or anything that the program has set up for you, and you can connect with your community. And that's just such a wonderful, wonderful part of a Pilates program that I wish I had at first, because we had like our little cohort of 7 people, but there was just nothing beyond that. And when we left, it was just us 7. Like there was nothing set up for previous cohorts. So a lot of programs, especially like internationally recognized programs, they have alumni groups set up and all of these wonderful things, and you may like go to like some studio 6 hours away, and then you run into another alumni and just these awesome things that come with that. So if you have the opportunity to work with a company that's internationally recognized, I highly recommend it. And another tip here is that what do you see yourself doing in the industry, or what's your inspiration, right? Like Do you want to work in like a physio or physical therapy setting, like working with people with injuries? Do you want to work one-on-one, like out of your home or out of like a boutique studio? Or are you more inspired to teach groups, like smaller groups, bigger groups, all of those things? And you really don't need to know the answer to that at this time, but it's a nice like thing to like plant the seed, because I had no clue. I had 2 hours of Pilates experience. I had no clue. But some programs are geared one way or the other, and some teach you a little bit of everything. Like mine just taught one-on-one, and so I felt proficient in one-on-one. But when I went to teach a group of even like 3 to 4 people, I was really learning on the go, and I didn't really feel prepared for that. So if you can go to a program that is geared towards your interests, awesome. Like there's so many out there. If you're looking for a program that just kind of can give you a well-rounded education, like here's how to teach group as well as how to work with like a special population, here's like guidelines for pregnancy, for example, as well as how to work one-on-one with somebody, that's an awesome way to go if you're just like, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do. Find a program that sets you up for success. And even with that nowadays, seek a program that teaches you how to teach online, because that is a huge avenue right now, and it's not going away. We've discovered in this past year or two, you can teach fitness online, you can teach Pilates online, and with that, you enter into a global market. Like you can work with people all around the world. And with that, it's not even just like, do they teach you how to cue without touching someone, because you can't touch anyone online, obviously. But do they teach you about technology? Like what are recommended microphones? What are recommended lighting settings? What's proper etiquette? Like how do you angle yourself? Just all these little things that I had to learn on just really on the fly as we kind of entered into this virtual fitness. But a lot of programs have adapted, or some programs have adapted to actually incorporate that in the curriculum. And before we get to the very last tip, I have one more for you, an extra one. There's so many approaches to Pilates, and programs gear themselves in different ways. There's a classical program, like if you want to learn how movements were taught by like Joseph or Romana, like 2 people that are a big part of Pilates history. How did they teach it? You can really take a historical point of view, which has pros and cons. There's also places that claim to be like science-based, they're commonly known as contemporary. And then there's evidence-based programs. So there's kind of like 3 different like categories if you wanted to like do broad strokes. Classical is nice because you'll get a nice history, and you'll be able to speak Pilates and all of the things. In my experience, there's also a little bit of, how do you say it? there's a little bit of this is the way, and you'll learn that way really well, but you may be misguided to go elsewhere. And so that would be a place, a limitation, let's say, to that approach. But you'll really learn the repertoire really well. You just may have to seek other education elsewhere afterwards in terms of how things have been updated. There are also contemporary programs that utilize the terminology science in their programs. And with them, what I would really recommend is to see if they provide citations for their claims. Because sometimes like programs will say, oh, this is science, so we do X, Y, Z, but the science was produced in the 1990s, and it was debunked in like 1999. And then 2000 it was debunked again, 2001 it was debunked again. And the science has moved on, but the program's still kind of shifting in that. So if they provide citations, meaning that they have proof for what they're what they really value, that can be really helpful. And that kind of leads you to like the evidence-based programs. Evidence-based programs are awesome because they kind of blend the two together really well and fill in the cracks, meaning that an evidence-based program can have a really nice historical point of view, and you learn the repertoire really, really well. But then we also kind of go through the timeline of what has happened since then. What does the science say? And not only what did the science say in the 1990s, but what is it currently saying? And how do we apply that to not only the exercises, but how do people learn? How do people learn movement? What's the best way for us to facilitate, this exercise, or maybe the repertoire in general? With that, those places will generally provide citations for what they are promoting, and the citations will be within the last like 5 or 10 years. So to wrap that up, there's like classical, there's contemporary, and there's evidence-based, and that's where you you can go with your values. Like, what do you really want out of a program? What do you want to grow into? And if your answer is, I want to be industry ready, and I want to be not only ready for the industry right now, but the years to come, I would highly recommend looking at an evidence-based program, because they are the most current, while still having the education of what Pilates is at its roots. So you have that, but you're not stuck in it. You're with the current technology, you're with the current evidence, and you can continue to grow. Which leads us to our bonus tip. If you walk away with just one thing from this video, first, if you just stuck around the whole time, thank you. And you get this bonus tip. But if you walk away with just one thing, this is it. I highly recommend that the person or people you study with foster a growth mindset. They foster a growth mindset with themselves, that they're constantly growing and they're constantly challenging themselves, but they're also there to set you up for success and to challenge you along the way. Because not only are you investing in an education for yourself in the here and now, but you're also investing in a mentorship, in someone that you look up to, and someone that can help connect you with other people. Because people that have a growth mindset, they surround themselves with people that also have a growth mindset. And that is my #1 tip for you. And I hope you enjoyed this video on tips on how to pick a program if you are looking to become a Pilates instructor. This is Adam McAtee, and have an awesome rest of your day.